everyone. As mentioned, my research is on empowering employees through satisfying meetings. And what do I click here?
I click the side, on the side.
Oh, okay, here we go. And I worked with Dr. Allen this summer. So, starting off my overview, my purpose, I'll go through these things throughout my presentation, my purpose, my design, what I found, and what this implies for the real world. My focus is industrial organizational psychology, and so within that field, I chose to do something that would impact most managers and employees, and that's meetings. And something that I think is important, what kind of inspired my research, was the idea of empowerment. I think, above all, empowering your employees gives you an advantage, especially in today's complex economy. The way, well, my quote here, why did I choose this topic? To be successful in today's organization, or to be successful in today's global economy, organizations need the knowledge, ideas, energy, and creativity of every employee. And I think we can all attest that that's true regardless of the type of organization. Managers want their employees to be empowered and innovative so that they're able to come up with new solutions and new ideas that haven't been thought of before. So I discovered that there's two different types of empowerment. There's socio-structural and psychological. Socio-structural focuses on more of the structural parts of the organization, like the environment, the climate, the manager roles and relationships, whereas psychological is individual to that employee and their personal characteristics. So I've discovered that psychological empowerment is manifested in these four cognitions: meaning, competence, self-determination, and impact, and these combine additively to form the construct. I chose empowerment because in the research I found that empowerment increases motivation, innovation, and creativity above all, and performance, which is probably the most important. So the traditional antecedents or predictors of empowerment are information sharing, rewards, self-esteem, and locus of control. The bottom two in orange there are the individual differences versus the managerial practices of information sharing and rewards, which led me to think about the meeting. My professor that I work with is the leading researcher in meetings, and so I was familiar on some of the articles on meetings, and a lot of them talk about, meetings are where information is shared, power is delegated, solutions are brought up. And so within job characteristics theory, it shows that core job characteristics have important work-related outcomes, and many of the job characteristics of the meeting are the same job characteristics from job characteristics theory that predict empowerment. So in order for meetings to predict empowerment, they're going to have to be satisfying or effective. A good quote here is, to understand components of overall job attitudes, one should consider the principal tasks and activities in which employees are required to spend large amounts of time. I think we can all attest to having a meeting, whether we're a student or a working adult, that meetings are just prevalent. We have to have meetings to collaborate and to work together and to get new ideas out. So the statistics that I found were people spend 6 hours per week, if not more, and typically more for higher levels of the organization, and 11 million meetings per day. That's a lot of meetings, so there's a lot of potential for manipulating the meeting and receiving some of the important outcomes. So one of the important studies shows that meeting satisfaction predicts job satisfaction, which is very important to having productive work and high performance levels. So there's two major reasons why psychological empowerment I thought may be an important outcome of satisfying meetings. One, meetings are a major job characteristic. In And two, the context in which meetings are embedded is similar to those of empowerment. So we wanted to moderate this relationship. If empowerment, or if satisfying meetings relates to empowerment, what's going to affect this relationship? What's going to make this relationship stronger? So initially, in my proposal, I decided that work interdependence might moderate the relationship. The extent to which individuals depend on others, they need to rely on information or materials or other people to do their job. When employees have those highly interdependent jobs, having more meetings, the need for more work meetings would also increase the level of empowerment. But unfortunately, the data did not support this hypothesis, so instead we looked at other moderators and found that meeting load actually moderated the relationship. So the number of meetings you have per week, or the amount of time you spend in meetings, affects your feelings about meetings. Other research also uses meeting load as a moderator. So if you're satisfied with your meetings, and that's linked to empowerment, then the more meetings you have would allow for more opportunity for empowerment to increase or to rise. So here's the model we came up with. Meeting satisfaction will predict psychological empowerment. There'll be a positive correlation there, and meeting load will moderate that relationship such that it's stronger the more meetings you have with a high meeting load. So the first hypothesis is that it will positively relate. The second is that it will positively relate above and beyond the traditional antecedents. And the second hypothesis is that meeting load will moderate. So we found all of these to be true. With our methods, we sent out 2 surveys to full-time employees in the southeast region of the United States. Our final sample was 148. We had good demographics. And we sent out, using VOVG, a survey tool, we sent out one email and then recorded the results, the data, and sent out a second. So the final number was only 148, even though more people completed the first survey. But we used this time lag technique to mitigate any concerns of common method bias. Our measures, the main variable was psychological empowerment, and like I told you, the 4 components of that are meeting competence, self-determination, and impact. Meeting satisfaction was measured using an 8-item scale. Meeting load, very basic, on average, how many meetings do you have, or how much time do you spend in your meetings? And the typical demographic control variables. We also control for the 4 antecedents, which are rewards, information, self-esteem, and locus of control. Creighton Breitzer developed this multi-dimensional measure, and that's kind of when, in 1995, when empowerment research really got its momentum because of this validated measure. So here's the table. And the most important statistic is right there. That 0.48 means that meeting satisfaction does, in fact, relate to levels of psychological empowerment. So we were happy to see that. And we used a regression analysis using SPSS software to test if meeting satisfaction related above those control variables. And in fact, it did. There's the beta weights. Less than 0.05, the p-value. So since this relates above and beyond the additional or the initial control variables, we see that it is significant. 4 antecedents explain a significant portion. Just information and self-esteem had significant beta weights, but in the final step, we saw that it does in fact relate above and beyond those predictors. Our moderation effect, we used moderated multiple regression. The first step there, the same participant background variables were again assessed or controlled for. That's tenure and your supervisor status. And then we centered the main effects, which were meeting satisfaction and meeting load. And in the final step, we found that it was significant. that it did strengthen the relationship between meeting satisfaction and empowerment. So you might not think that the relationship looks very significant, but what we're looking at here is the slope of the line, and we see that indeed the slope of the line is different, so there is a minimal effect, but it is there. Median load does have an effect. So what does this mean? Basically, it confirms my belief that meetings matter, that too often people discount meetings for being irrelevant or unimportant, which they can be, but if you utilize your meetings and really work to make them effective and satisfying, you can have many beneficial outcomes. And empowerment is just one of them. So don't be afraid of your meetings. Just try to make them the best that you can and be involved, and especially as a manager, be aware of your meetings and how your employees feel about their meetings. Consider the quantity as well as the quality. Call the important meetings and include the people that need to be there, but limit the amount of meetings if they're relevant, or the time you spend in the meetings, or maybe consider having the option to opt out of certain meetings for certain people. They're crucial, but there comes that point where there is too many. And above all, they must be satisfying. It's also interesting to look at the reverse effects. If you have bad meetings, what can result from that? But regarding psychological empowerment theory, this adds a completely new antecedent. So I think researchers should continue to work to find more antecedents to psychological empowerment as well as meeting satisfaction. There's still many left untested or unresearched. So meetings are definitely, I think, in my opinion, another important job characteristic. So researchers could go back and look at job characteristics theory and compare meetings to other important work-related outcomes that job characteristics theory says happens. So managers practically should evaluate their meetings. They could use training techniques, hire professionals to evaluate their meetings, or they could do it themselves. Above all, they should control their meeting load, they should control their meeting load, but above all, they should make sure that their meetings are satisfying to their employees. Like other studies, there were limitations. This was a focused nature, and this was also correlational, so maybe in the future, an experimental design could be done with similar steps to see if there's any causation. What I'm doing with this research is I've had it submitted to be published for the Journal of Psychology and Business, so we're still waiting to hear back from that. But I'll continue to study meetings as well as empowerment. And I would like to thank everyone that made this possible, my professor and the College of Arts and Sciences and the dean. Thank you for this opportunity. Are there any questions? These are my tables if you were interested in the other statistics.